to the Isn't That Rich podcast. I'm your host, Jill Franks.
And I'm your host, Ashley McVicker.
And if you've scrolled Airbnb lately, you've probably noticed that the short-term rental market feels a bit crowded. And maybe everybody in the area seems to have a cabin or a cottage or a guest suite up for rent. But here in Southern Illinois, there's one name behind some of the most unique stays in the region, and that's Southern Illinois Vacation Rental.
And today we are joined by the woman who is behind it all, Allison Hasler. She built a fast-growing short-term rental management company right here in our home of Southern Illinois and is helping local owners turn their properties into five-star experiences.
Now, she just returned from the VRMA conference for 2025, and that's the big industry vacation rental conference for the pros. And we are so excited to have her here to talk all about what she learned and what's next for 2026 in Southern Illinois vacation rental. Welcome on, Allison. So I'm excited to hear from you, Allison, all about how you got started with your business.
Okay, it is really fun and completely out of left field.
Yeah.
So my husband sold his business in 2015-ish. He had a barge company on Lake of Egypt. It's still in operation there today, called American Shoreline. And what I like to call is a work sabbatical.
Okay.
That he didn't really have a full idea of what he wanted to do afterwards. So naturally, as a boater, he buys a 50-foot motor yacht on Kentucky Lake. And he decided, since he already had his captain's license, he was going to charter a pleasure boat on Kentucky Lake.
Okay.
And as a supportive wife, and he has always had the entrepreneurial spirit. He owned his own business when we were dating. He's always kept life interesting. So this was not really too far out of left field for the two of us. Okay. So in 2015, we started the introduction to the hospitality business. So about 10 years ago. And we absolutely loved it. So he was the captain. I was first mate. We had birthday parties and bachelorette parties and family reunions and all kinds of things on this 50-foot motor yacht that slept 10 comfortably.
Oh my goodness.
At the same time, or we'll fast forward a little bit, and he ended up getting diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and it really set him back physically for a while. And during that time, we decided that, you know what, when we're not chartering, we should just pull the keys, put it in a transient slip, and put it on Airbnb. Airbnb was still in its infancy at that time, so we really didn't know what we were getting into. But what I quickly learned is that people will pay a premium for unique experiences.
Yes.
Period. The end. There were two things that we learned from that experience. Number one, we could do and share our experiences that we love much closer to home. And two, we really love the hospitality business. So as we transitioned out of the 50-foot motor yacht, we started building cabins on what's essentially the back 5 acres of our home estate. During that transition, we were basically juggling 2 to 3 rentals. And so I very quickly had to figure out what scales and what can streamline the processes to make sure that everything is running like a well-oiled machine on the back end. Fast forward a few years later, it was around 2018, 19 that everything was a well-oiled machine. We had since sold the boat, but we had our cabins, and we really were looking at some other options or other ways to generate cash flow to build out some more cabins, and some ideas that we had with, a centralized pavilion and all these other ideas that we had with our cabins. So I thought, since I'm doing this on the back end, and I feel like adding one more wouldn't change anything, it wouldn't change much, then maybe I can find out if anybody else would want me to help them with theirs. So I reached out to a friend who is that was selling a property. And I said, hey, if you're selling your short-term rental because it's too much legwork and, all the things, let me try it out. If it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul. We can go our separate ways. You can put it back on the market. Mm-hmm. And so they are a client to this day. They're actually getting ready to sell. So it is changing hands, but they were it was the first client. And from there, it spread by word of mouth that that I was taking on other properties. So in the Airbnb world, which I'll get on that soapbox later, is the co-hosting side of things. But truly, it's a property management company for short-term rentals. And by the time 2021 rolled around, I realized that I didn't just have this side gig. I had a full-fledged business that I needed to take seriously. So at that time, I had about 10 properties, and it was to the point where I was at a crossroads and either needed to hang up my full-time job working for the city of Marion or stop where I am, because I was almost to that point where I could not do either one well. And so luckily my boss was an entrepreneur and was very much supportive of that direction of giving it the best shot I could. Yeah. So I hung my hat at the city, and now we're at almost 50 properties.
Oh
50 properties.
Gosh.
I was going to ask you, I'm thinking maybe she's got 12, 15. No, you have 50 properties that you manage.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Crazy.
So I did not know that was your husband who was American Shoreline, first of all, because he did our riprap around our house back in, I think, probably 2015 or 16 when we moved to the lake. So that's interesting. I had no idea. And that's how you got your started, was the big yacht, the 50-foot yacht. That's crazy on Kentucky Lake. So you started this, you owned your properties, and then you gradually got into property management, more and more properties. Now you're at 50 properties. Like, what was the biggest challenge of when you started managing others? Like you said, it was kind of a seamless process taking on that first property. Yeah. When you became manager of 50, what was the biggest challenge for you?
Yeah. It's so funny because every industry has their growing pains, right? So as you get bigger or as you need to scale, every entrepreneur goes through those growing pains. The biggest growing pains that I had were probably in 2021, when we had basically doubled in size from the beginning of 2021 to the end of 2021. So we started with around 10 or so, and we ended with 20. So not having those systems and processes and people in place, by the end of 2021, I was so ready to just fold everything in, quit. I didn't care if I was going to be working at a gas station. I was just done. I was like, give me any other job besides this. This is hard and this is not fun. And I really went into it. I wouldn't say it was depression, but there was so much anxiety that I had every day that I woke up with, and it was so hard. But what happened is that I just didn't have the pieces in place to scale that quickly. And once I added those people to delegate some of the tasks, and then also changing the processes and realizing that what works for 5 doesn't work for 10. What works for 15 is going to be different than what works for 20. So I have seen that we put very significant shifts about every 5 properties. And even to this day, you wouldn't think that, because the ratio is much smaller, the difference between 40 and 45 properties, but really there are still significant shifts. It may be a new tech stack that we add to continue to grow. It may be adding a new person to the management side. All of those things shift very much from every moment that we scale. And in the early stages, I didn't realize that. I knew that it was profitable, but the profit wasn't worth the stress. And when I realized that I needed to add somebody to take some of that weight off and some of the responsibility off of my plate, that was a huge game changer.
Yeah, I think that's how it always is with a small business when you're going to hire your first person to help. Yeah. It's especially, I'm kind of that way too, where you like to have your hands in everything and do it yourself. And so finding out that you actually will do a better job if you have one more person along with you. I feel like that had to have been a big step, is hiring your first employee.
It was. Yeah. It was such a big step. And what I realized, and, trying to listen to as many leadership and entrepreneurial podcasts, some are very industry specific, some are much more broad, is that, if somebody can do a job, a task that you don't love, or that you are not really great at 80% capacity, that that you feel that you can do at 100, it is far more better to let them do that job. And once I realized that and accepted that and relinquished control, the business grew, and it grew better. So that was definitely the biggest challenge. And you would think that approaching 50 right now would be more stress, but it's actually much less stress, because now I've learned how to scale and how to put those pieces in place. So now we're looking at what that next step is for 2026.
How many people do you have working for you?
So that is a great question. We have all independent contractors. So all of our cleaning team are independent contractors, my bookkeeping, legal, everybody is an independent contractor. So as far as our team of partners, so that cohort of partners that we work with on a daily basis, is around 15 or so. It fluctuates a little bit during the off season and the peak season. So our cleaning team is higher during peak season. Obviously, we get cleaners that are teachers that do some side hustling in the summertime to earn some extra money, and those sort of things. So we do have an influx in the summertime, but it's right around 15.
So you're right now kind of probably just the person that you don't really manage the properties anymore. You manage the people.
Oh no,
or you still do it all.
We still do it.
You're like, oh no, yeah, we were talking more this. You're like, no, I'll still scrub a toilet.
Yeah. I am still backup cleaner.
Yeah.
I am still the primary communications person that people speak to on the daily basis. Now we do have some things in place that make that easier. So that is very helpful. But yeah, I am still very much involved on the daily basis. It just changes a little bit. Mm-hmm. So during the off season right now, we have a transition of, this is fall season, right? So we have fall leaves coming down, and we have a little bit more gaps during the week because it's a shoulder season is what they call it. So we're moving from peak season, which is our peak season is really until the end of October, because our wineries have their peak season in October. But we do have a little bit less travel during the week. So those properties are clean, but they sit empty. So all of the tree debris will start collecting on porches and things like that. Mm-hmm. So myself and my assistant manager are really the outdoor inspectors, and going in and inspecting and making sure that the outsides look as great as the insides for those incoming guests. I am getting ready to hire a new position for an inspector. So that is something that I want to do myself, and I will do for a series of time so that I understand, number one, what all I am expecting and what is a fair market value for that position. So all of the positions that we have, I have done myself. And then before I hire for a position, I also do them myself for a certain amount of time to make sure that I understand what I'm expecting of people, making sure that it makes sense logistically, and that the things on paper make sense for somebody to take on that position. And then again, for fair market value of what I'm expecting.
That's so true, is that you have to do that role first to know, especially, and I'm going to use this example. So we have a Airbnb or a short-term rental. We put it out.
Yeah.
And it's down in Elizabethtown, and finding cleaners is so hard to be consistent. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but even Ashley and I,
Yeah, Jill's like running around and she's like, it's just one of those things, like you have a particular way and a standard for a property of yours.
Yeah.
So
we were down there cleaning this weekend because we had a same day check in and check out, check in. And I needed somebody last minute on a Saturday to go do a flip. And so Ashley was my go-to girl for cleaning the cabin.
yeah, I think people, and you can probably speak a lot to this, people think that Airbnbs are short-term rentals. I feel like we all use Airbnb as the phrase, but it's true. It's a short-term rental.
Yeah.
I feel like people think they're super passive, and maybe to the point where if you have someone like you managing it for you, it is passive. But if you're kind of managing it yourself, like, I don't think it's passive income at all.
No. And really, even so, I've laughed because that is so true. It is not passive income. And really, even if you are an owner that has a property manager like myself, it's still not passive income. There is still work to be done. The responsibilities are still a homeowner's responsibilities, that as if you were not renting it out and you were only using it for yourself, those responsibilities are still a homeowner's responsibilities. And that is something that I feel like there's been a lot of podcasts, there's been a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of TikToks that say that this is a magical passive income investment. And it really isn't. You are working with a house or a property that ages, things break, mechanical issues happen, septic issues happen. Those sort of things are just part of it. If you've ever owned a home, then it's no different if you own a second or a third or a fourth home. Those things still happen. Yes, it is a lot easier if you have somebody that is helping deal with those things, but they're still very much something that you have to be involved in.
I think that's a big misconception people have, especially when they have a property manager in place as well, as that. And maybe you do take on a lot of these processes, I'm not sure, but is the homeowner in charge of mowing their own grass and making sure they're paying for those like the dishes that get broken? Because those little things still happen. And sometimes as a property owner, you think, oh, well, I have a property manager. They're in charge of everything. And but that's not always true.
That is not. So when I have a homeowner or a potential property investor contact me about maybe they are looking into getting into the short-term rental market, or they have a property that they're self-managing that they want to offload to somebody else. I have not just a discovery call, but I send them a slide deck that outlines everything very transparently from the beginning of what responsibilities that I have as a property manager and what responsibilities they still have as a homeowner. And one of those is very specific, is and this is just one example, is land management. We're not land managers, we're short-term rental property managers. And that is still something that is a responsibility of the homeowner. So if you have a ton of landscaping, you're going to need to find that landscaper that is going to be able to come and make sure that it's weeded, make sure that the landscape stays nice and pretty and things like that. Because once we move out of our strength, then we dilute what we can do as a property manager for revenue management, for occupancy, for guest experience. So we really stay in our lane, focusing on guest experience, and we very clearly do not deviate into these other sectors like Another great example would be marketing campaigns on social media. We do our own marketing campaigns as a company that highlights the properties that we have, but we're not going to manage a page dedicated directly to one single property. Now we have really, really highly successful owners that have ran their own marketing campaigns. So for example, our Shawnee Hills Glamping Dome, that is in Simpson, Illinois. It was it was factually the most favorited Airbnb in the state of Illinois.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
However, approximately 80% of our bookings for that property are direct bookings because they have run such a successful campaign on social media that they drive everybody to the direct booking website, which is a whole other tangent that we're going to talk if we have time we can talk about. But that saves people immediately 15 to 20% cost because we're avoiding those online travel agency fees like Airbnb and Vrbo. So they've had an excellent campaign. That is the owners doing that. That is not us. We promote it on ourselves. We share what they are promoting. But if we were to deviate into that and spend our energy, time, and resources into individual market campaigns, now we're a marketing manager. And that is not my strength. That is not where we do our best. We stay with property management, and we make that really clear with our property owners from the very beginning. So I always warn them after our discovery call, I'm going to send you this. Please open it on a desktop because it is very wordy. You're not going to want to read this on mobile.
No.
But I'm going to send this, and this is going to lay out all of those frequently asked questions from the very beginning. And we're going to realize very quickly if we are a good fit or not. And if this isn't a win-win for both of us, then it's probably not going to be a good fit, and we can move on and not waste each other's time.
That's so smart. I love the clarity element in that you start right from the get-go. This is what you're getting. We're not experts in this.
That is part of those 2021 growing pains too, because I did run through a lot of taking on anybody that had a great house, but maybe wasn't a good fit.
Yes.
In partnership wise. And it is so much easier to realize that from the very beginning, trust your instinct and say, hey, I just don't think this is going to be a good fit, versus ignoring that instinct, taking on a partnership that feels forced and feels like you're putting a square peg into a round hole, and then having to go through that Dear John letter and the breakup and the untying of things. It is so much better and so much more respectful of everybody's time to really find those things out from the very beginning.
You talk about like landscaping. What are just a few other high level things that you're like, we don't do this? Like I see you out there not mowing the grass, obviously.
Right. Yeah. So
what else?
A couple of big ones would be, so the land management is a big one. I would say that probably the top 3 would be land management, social media marketing, and then probably the next one would be wear and tear on the property or on the furnishings. We can't control what owners are purchasing for a property to put it together and make it look and feel like a home. And I hate to say it, but if everything was bought from IKEA and 2 months down the road, everything is broke, then that's not
not on you to fix.
Yeah, that is not on us to fix. And we make that very clear that, there is it is somewhat of a gray area that we have to navigate on a case by case basis, but there's a very distinct difference between intentional damage, accidental damage, and wear and tear. And wear and tear is the responsibility of the owner. Accidental damages and intentional damages are a responsibility of the property manager to navigate and to help replace.
Yeah. I think when you started this, and you mentioned these growing pains in 2021 and exactly what was happening in the market, I think it was such a great time for people to buy homes, and they thought, oh, I'm going to make some passive income. I'm going to put this second house on the market, and I'm going to throw a bunch of beds in there. And so I can have a 15-person capacity at this house and rent it for more so I can make as much money as possible.
Welcome to the STR soapbox that I want to get on.
And it was such a good time to get into it because the mortgage rates were low and all of this stuff, but so much has changed since then. Yeah. And I would love to start talking about what some of those changes have been in the short-term rental market, especially for people who are looking to get into this.
Gone are the days that you can put grandma's estate sale furniture into a property and think that it's going to give you high revenue. I don't know if that ever really was the case. Yeah. But a lot of people did that. But because of the outcome of COVID and all of the repercussions and this domino effect of what happened after COVID, which was not only a benefit in a lot of ways that we had the mortgage rates were super low. So a lot of people were buying second and third homes. But then we also had in Southern Illinois and a lot of rural areas, there was an influx of travelers because they were all wanting to escape the city. So we had this both going up and to the right. So we had supply going up, but we also had demand going up for about 18 to 24 months. We had both going parallel up and to the right. What happened afterwards is that we have the same supply that is still up, but demand has come back down to pre-COVID levels. We have travelers that are travelers are still traveling. We also are in a little bit more of a volatile market where the booking window has shrunk. So even though they're still traveling, they're waiting a little bit longer and a little bit closer to that arrival date in order to make that decision on where to book. So we're seeing that happen. And it does make people nervous because they feel like, they look at, say, the month of November and it feels very empty compared to if they had the same property 5 years ago or 3 years ago, that 6 to 8 weeks in advance, weekends were full, weekdays were filling in. And we really don't see that right now because people are waiting until much closer to those arrival dates that they need in order to make that decision. And now that we have that big supply, they have a lot more choices to choose from. So in order to stand out, you really need to know your avatar of your personal guest. And the closer that you can come to accommodating that very specific person, the better off you're going to be. And that is one thing that we have really focused on from the very beginning, is that me in the city is the avatar that I'm searching for. So that is a, middle age, has a family, wanting to book something nice. I'm kind of a cheapskate, so I like to cook when I'm traveling, so and have a little bit of control over not having to eat at restaurants all the time. Yeah. But I'm also going to be willing to shell out that extra expense for a nice experience, a private home, somewhere that's going to feel good and feel like a second home. So there's those very distinct avatars that you really need to understand, because if you do decide to throw 2 queen beds per bedroom in a 3-bedroom house, guess who you're going to attract? It's probably not going to be the best guest and the best behaving guest. So there is a lot of changes that are going to shift the behavior of not only the traveler, but also of the owner/hosts.
And I think that's so true because I actually on our little property had somebody reach out to me this week and they say, why do you only allow 12 people to stay in your house? I'm like, well, I have this amount of beds and that's exactly for everybody's safety. But that's I don't want a bunch of parties at my house.
I probably get asked at least once a week if we can have a small wedding or a family reunion of day guests. And I have a canned message that is professional. It's empathetic. It's nice.
I would love for you to send that to me.
It is. And
Oh my gosh.
by far and wide, we do not have the trash system, the septic system, the parking arrangements, or the insurance to host events. Period. Done. The end. No. So we have, and it also gives me an opportunity to leverage promoting other small businesses in the area. And I am more than happy to give those recommendations of where, if they say that, oh, their small event is just 50 people, that's not small when you have a property that sleeps 10. So I have the opportunity to share with them, depending on what location they're in, or what location that they're wanting to stay in, and say, these are the top 5 places that I would recommend that are designed for small events. They specifically are event centers. Now, most of the time people are doing this because they're being cheap and they don't want to pay those events.
Yeah.
Right. So I let them know, I'm like, we have the most magnificent state parks, Fern Cliff. People are having weddings and reunions there all the time. Same with Giant City. You can go to anywhere in Shawnee National Forest, with the right things. So, but we have a very black and white rule regarding events. And I know that a family reunion where most of the people are over 50 are not going to try to wreak havoc. Not usually. Yeah. Not usually. Wreak havoc and, be a party per se. It's still an event. It is still the rules. It still is excess trash accumulation that once a week trash service cannot accommodate. It's still ruts in the yard because we don't have a place for parking. It is still a stress on septic systems when there's only 3 bathrooms. So that is my soapbox. Yeah. Feel free to make that much less.
No, I'm right along with you with this because that's my thing too. And we have a private well and, we're managing all that stuff. So I am completely in line with you on that.
I'm very interested in Airbnb. I've been talking to Jill a lot about it. I'm curious to know, and I'm sure people are curious to know, what are the best types of Airbnb short-term rental, I got to get it right, in our area in Southern Illinois? Is it cabins? Is it lake homes? Is it, a house in town? Like, what are you seeing in your management company that get maybe the highest bookings? And maybe it's not a specific, cabin or lake house, but it is just like the ones that are the most clean, which I'm sure they're all clean because you manage it, right? But
yes.
Yes.
So there is a very distinct difference between high and low season here in Southern Illinois. But what I have found is the most consistent are unique, small, hot tub.
okay.
Those are those 3 things. I am giving you the secret ingredients to a successful and sustainable short-term rental. I'm not saying a shack, throw a hot tub in, grandma's country estate sale, and expect the same outcome as, say, our tulip wood cabins, which were just built. They're south of Carbondale. Gorgeous, very beautiful. They're small. Most of them only sleep 2. I think we have two out of the 4 sleep 4 people. The other 2 sleep 2 people. They're the most consistently booked properties that we have. Our A-frames are another one. They are very unique because they're A-frame. They only sleep 4. They all have hot tubs. They are very consistent. The unique part is what the magic ingredient is. That's the icing on the cake. But the nuts and bolts is that the smaller, and if you think about it in the way that you travel, how many times do you travel with your extended family versus how many times do you travel with a friend or just your husband? So there's a lot more travelers out there in ratio that only need a 1-bedroom, maybe a 1-bedroom with a pull-out couch, or a second bedroom or bed configuration of some sort, but designed to be a couple's retreat. And when a couple, and this is so much fun, and I can talk about this all day, of course. I can provide a couple, let's say that a couple is needing a place to stay and they want a hot tub, because most do, and they are looking for a place in Southern Illinois. And I have a couple of different options. Maybe all of my high demand properties are already booked. So here's what I have to give them. I have a lakefront property that sleeps 10 that has a hot tub. And then I have a property that is a 1-bedroom that's unique, but it doesn't have the hot tub that they were looking for. 9 times out of 10, they choose the one and opt for the no hot tub. And the reason why is because even though they are not, they're not going to necessarily overpay for too much house, but the psychological thought of having so much house on a lake that is now out of lake season, in their psychology, in their minds, they feel like it is too much. They are overspending and not necessarily going to utilize the amenities that are there. Mm-hmm. So they're going to opt for what they need, which is that 1-bedroom property. Mm-hmm. And even if I offered them the same amount for both, maybe not the same amount for both, because would have a higher cleaning fee for for a larger property, but in most circumstances, they will opt for that.
The smaller.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to know some of the trends that you're seeing. So we talked about the top property type people are looking for in Southern Illinois specifically.
Sure.
What trends are you seeing with guest experiences? Like, what are people looking for when they come here? Amenities at the cabin. You mentioned hot tubs, other experiences, design. Is that important for people?
It is. Yeah. It's very important. There is, so of course, location is a big one, right? So there are people that are coming primarily for hiking, that want to be close to Shawnee National Forest or our great hiking in our state parks and things like that. Some are really wanting to be close to the wine trail, or they're really in town because there's an event at SIU, but they want to explore the area. So they want to find something maybe a little bit south of Carbondale. So we have a lot of different variables on why people are here. And I think we're going to see a major shift in that as we have the developments that are coming and all of the construction and development that we are seeing on the west side of Marion and other things that are popping up. And so we have a lot of different reasons for people's travels. One thing that was a huge take back from the Vacation Rental Management Association conference that I just attended is that people pay for experiences. They're not paying for just a head and a bed. So if they wanted that, they would go to the hotel, and some do, and that is totally okay. Mm-hmm. But if they're wanting an experience, they're wanting an experience that is going to wow them. So as I said before, that gone are the days that you can just throw beds everywhere and whatever furniture is fine. That's not selling anymore. Mm-hmm. People are not booking that. I'm not sure if they ever really did in a huge consistency, but, and that doesn't mean that you have to have an upscale or luxury property. It does mean that you need to curate your property. Even if it's an economy property, it still needs to be curated for that economy person, that economy sensitive avatar. So if that means that they are looking for, extra amenities, like maybe you just have individual packets of oatmeal and granola bars and things like that for breakfast so that they can grab and go. Those sort of things are really helpful. In a luxury property, you may want a higher end coffee or our locally owned coffee rotisserie or roasteries, having those on there because they're willing to pay extra. So they want that extra special experience.
Yeah, I love that.
I think people like to kind of, like when I travel, I know that, like you said about the coffee, it's so simple and it's so cheap. Like if you went somewhere and your host provided you a bag of coffee from the local coffee shop, like think about Crown Brew around here, like that is a part of our area, and that, brings someone into the experience that you're talking about. And it's just a very small, inexpensive thing you can do as a host.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And it's something that we have already researched for 2026, and we are getting ready to implement. So we're shifting from our regular Folgers to a small company that is in Southern Illinois that we're going to be able to promote and be able to, bring people back to them to their website to purchase more and supporting those small businesses. We calculated it, and it's roughly twice the amount that we already pay for coffee, but it is still such a small expense for the impact that it can have on our guests. So even though if we're, say, at 50 cents per ounce, and we're going to end up paying $1 an ounce for a local roastery, it's going to be worth it in the end, because that guest is going to have such a unique experience, not only with showing that we have this support of other Southern Illinois small businesses, but then also that extra special feeling of having something that is unique. And if you're a coffee drinker like me, you're going to appreciate a local roastery versus, something that's mass made and burnt, as I learned as I was doing my research.
Burnt and bitter.
Burnt and bitter.
Coffee is so important to everybody. I mean, just is. Everybody, it's part of the ritual of staying somewhere, right? You wake up to morning coffee. I love to talk about, moving back to like what's going on in Southern Illinois. Something I want to know about is, are there any new rules or regulations, because whenever people are considering buying a property to list on for short-term rental, they may not or may not be able to do that. Is there any new rules or regulations in Southern Illinois that people should know about?
So currently there are not any newly imposed rules. One of the things that I learned very early on as I moved into this role of a property manager is that I needed to have the appropriate license. Now, Airbnb calls it co-hosting. Co-hosting is not a real word. That's a made up Airbnb word. That is a branded Airbnb word. But in the eyes of the court, if you are doing property management activities and there is a dispute, and you do not have a leasing agent license that is sponsored by a broker, a sponsoring broker, you can be in some very hot water. Yes, possibly the owner, but you specifically are going to be in very, very hot water, because in the eyes of the court, you are doing and performing management activities in the state of Illinois require a leasing agent license. So we can call everybody co-host.
Yeah.
Co-host is not going to hold up in the eyes of the court.
Right.
So when I started moving into this realm, I learned very quickly that I needed to get my ducks in the row, and I did not want to have any sort of gray area in what my role was. So I went ahead and got my leasing agent license at a very early on, so that I knew that I was in line with the state of Illinois requirements. Now, in the state of Illinois, there is no real distinction between long-term property management, so long-term rental property management, and short-term rental property management. So it is, some may argue, oh, that's just for long-term rentals, but that's not necessarily the case. There's no case law yet in the state of Illinois what that looks like, not that I know of. But again, in the eyes of the court, you don't want to be there. You don't want to be in that gray area, because these are property management activities that you're doing, unless you're just doing communication and you're not touching the property at all. That's a totally different thing. That would be, I think, what Airbnb would consider as a co-host, or what their initial design for that was as a co-host. But if it's anything beyond just communication with guests, then it's property management activities. To that end, there are no other requirements other than the occupancy taxes. So Illinois is 5.64%. All of our counties besides Pope, I believe, are 5%. Pope is 4%. And then our cities, so each city has their own occupancy taxes, and each of these government bodies has a different wording for it. Lodging tax, occupancy tax, bed tax, hotel tax. It's all the same thing. It is not sales tax. It is the head and the bed. So in Marion and Carbondale, it's also an additional 9%. Now, these all go away after, I believe, 28 days. So if you have what's called a midterm rental, so somebody that's staying for a month or a month-to-month lease, then those those occupancy taxes go away. So they are not on the hook to pay those. And in most cases, you will pass those along to the guest. The guest understands that they have to pay them. Just like if we went to the store, we know that we're paying a sales tax. It's passed along to us, and then it's that company's responsibility to pay that to the. Now, if you're not passing those on to the guest, that does not mean that you're not responsible for paying them. Now, I have spoken to quite a few people that manage their own properties, or let me rephrase that. I have in the past spoke to some people in the short-term rental industry that just refuse to collect and refuse to pay.
Or report. You're required to, we report monthly on the stays and amounts.
My bookkeeper does all of that. I did do that for a couple of years myself, and I do not enjoy. I do not enjoy doing that. So I now have a bookkeeper that does that, but we still report monthly and pay monthly. Yeah.
You mentioned midterm stays. Yeah. Now, lots of people talk short-term rental, or we're going on vacation for a week. What are you seeing and just explain it to our listeners, like what midterm stay is, and then what type of people you're seeing book those and do that? You know, like, is it the travel nurses? Like, I think that's super interesting.
Midterm rentals. I love talking about midterm rentals because we have this explosion of exciting developments that are going on in Southern Illinois. Marion is a great example, but they are across Southern Illinois and in other areas as well. What we have is this huge gap in what people that are on these construction sites and it does stretch into the medical field and other professionals that are coming in on contract work. There is a huge gap because long-term rental owners, property managers don't want to do the upfront cost of completely furnishing a property. You have short-term rental hosts that don't want to give up that premium weekends stays in order to accommodate a month rental. So you have this huge gap, and we have a growing demand, which means that there is a huge opportunity for hosts to harness in on those. Now, we have a engineer that is contracted with the coal mine industry in a property with his wife and young child that is going to be there, I think probably end up being a year, but is on a month-to-month lease. We have the go-kart track engineer that's going to be here until the end of November. He's hoping that it'll be wrapped up, which is exciting in itself. In one of our midterm rentals, I have some in Carbondale where we have people that are on rotation for either the medical field or they're doing residencies in our hospitals that are just here for or finishing up a semester at the college at SIU, and they don't need a full-time lease. They just need one semester. There are so much more than what, say, Furnish Finders really promoted, like the traveling nurse, right? Mm-hmm. There is so many more people traveling now, even in the case of just remote workers. So we have so many more remote workers now. We've all heard that, everybody's forcing everybody back to work, right? That's not really the case. We still have remote workers, but we have so many contract workers that come into the area. They are here for 6 to 8 weeks, and then they move on to their other project. And because we have two sides of this coin of people that have housing that either don't understand or are not willing to make the accommodations for that month-to-month lease, it is a huge opportunity for people that want to get into the short-term rental market, and it's a relatively safe area to go into. We have all of our city limit properties are midterm rentals. Mm-hmm. Now we will fill in the gaps if it's late or if the booking window has become shortened, we will shorten those day requirements. But all in all, we have been very successful with the month-to-month rentals.
I want to talk about more of what you learned at this conference, because this sounds like something that's exciting that you brought back, was even this information about the short-term rental or the midterm rental stays. So what else were your big takeaways from this conference? And maybe you can tell us what the conference was and all of this good stuff.
I asked my husband too, just to say what he got out of it, because we went to a few sessions together, and then we would separate and do some that were more specific to each of our roles in our company. And one of the things that he had mentioned, which, by the way, it was fantastic. We've been in the hospitality industry for 10 years, management company for 5. This was our first Vacation Rental Management Association conference, which is the biggest, most well-known in the short-term rental industry. And it was in Las Vegas this year. It was fantastic. Everybody was super friendly. A couple of takeaways that we had, one of them that my husband mentioned was that the highest percentage of occupancy comes from small to mid-size management companies, because they are, number one, laser focused on the guest experience and the quality over quantity, but they have the ability to implement those tech stacks and those things that are going to streamline processes. So there was this very clear and evident space that those are being the most successful right now. One of the other things, another big focus, was the move to direct bookings. Now, we could have a whole podcast.
And maybe we will. We'll have a follow-up podcast episode.
This topic is a lot of discussions. And of course, we have vendor exhibits, and Airbnb has the biggest, most expensive one there, right? And right next to it is VRBO. And Booking.com. And so they're all there. But, and to your point, Ashley, is that the Airbnb is now lingo for short-term rental. However, it is just an online travel agency. Yeah. That's all it is. It is no different than Booking.com. Mm-hmm. They have done very good marketing around trust. So we do have repeat guests that, as much as I will say blue in my face, you will save 15 to 20% by just going to our direct booking page to book after they have already stayed there as a guest. They'll still go back to Airbnb.
They trust it. Yeah.
There is a level of trust. And Airbnb isn't the only one. It is on average 15 to 18% markup that you're paying those service fees. That's pretty well across the board. Booking.com is 20%. VRBO is roughly 20%. Theirs is still a split fee where it's 5% to host, 15% to the guest. Airbnb is shifting more towards the booking.com model, which is all of it goes to host. But just like every other industry, it still gets passed on to the guest. So you're not getting any better deal because you're no longer seeing that service fee. It's now padded in that price.
Yeah. You're just raising your prices as I would just raise my price to reflect what Airbnb is charging me.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So saving the guest and the host hundreds of dollars per transaction in some cases, and over the course of a year, thousands of dollars, is really where the short-term industry as a whole on the international level is seeing where this goes. So if you are in a position like me as a property manager or own a property management company, or you're a single booking property, you're a self-managing host, it may be worth getting that direct booking site. It does not have to be, all the bells and whistles. You do not have to spend thousands of dollars on a website. You can make it very simple, and it's just a way to provide an optional way for those transactions. Another thing that I noticed was, so whether you have one property that you self-manage, or you have a property management company, or you're a host that you're wanting to scale, you have to treat this as a business. Whether you admit it or not, it's a business. Now, the beauty of that is that as a business, you can do with it whatever you want. You can design your business however you want, as long as it's legal, right? So, but you have to start treating it as a business as well. And with the viewpoint, and let me turn the tables here. So let's say that there is an assessed home, and I'm speaking to this, and maybe I need to back up here. So treating it as a business is really important. Number one, for your just legally, right? So you are getting income from this property. So you need to treat it as a business, knowing what your deductions are, knowing what your profit margins are, all of those things. But also keeping a really good record of what that looks like for resale value, whether that's one property or whether that's a whole management company like mine. Now, let's say that there is an assessed home for $200,000, and that's the assessed value of property, and it clears $40,000 a year. Now, they're asking $375,000 because of the income that it provides, right? So let's say, so that's roughly an 8% capitalization rate. It's pretty good, standard, like not excellent, but it's good, right? So in the viewpoint of a bank loan, and this is where we'll talk about this a little bit as banks, is, the loan amount over residential assessment for a very successful short-term rental, does it immediately defer to a commercial loan? Because I feel like this is something that maybe listeners that are interested in hearing me talk are either future investors or are interested in getting into the short-term rental market, or they are actively looking for short-term rentals. So really, this is a question for them. Does that immediately go to the commercial loan side, or is this something that is considered on a regular residential loan side? And how does the bank look at these types of investments?
Right. No, and that's just it. Is a lot of them do push them towards commercials. Yeah, immediately.
Yeah, that's what I have come to realize, is that we have these homes that are making really great income, and then say the the people want to move that money from this project to another project, but then their resale value is valued at what that income was over the last 3 years instead of the assessed value of what otherwise is just a residential home. And so we see that a lot, and I see that a lot in this market because we have properties that we have a property that has just signed a purchase agreement that maybe an all-in amount was $100,000, but because of what the income generated per year over the last couple of years was just sold for $400,000.
Stop it.
Yeah.
So those are things to think about, clearly.
Those are things to think about clearly. And if you are getting into, especially turnkey, so something that has already been operating as a short-term rental, is to really understand that commercial loan side and to talk to your bank about the commercial loan side and what that entails if you're not very familiar with it. So that would be the biggest advice there, is treat it as a business. And my personal take is always to treat it as a business that you would want to sell someday, even if you don't. I treat mine as I'm on a 5-year plan to sell my business. I may keep it for the next 20 years, but I want to make sure that I have positioned people in place for me to step out of my role if I get a chronic illness, if I am, if I go through a life challenge where I need to step out of that role, that my business still operates without me. So it's not just about resale value, but just putting those positions in place so that nothing is relying solely on me.
Right.
So yeah, those were some huge takeaways from the VRMA. For the most part, it was just drinking water from a fire hose, and we're still digesting all of the things that we learned from it. A lot of them are really industry specific that would bore the audience, I believe. Yeah. So, but yeah, the number one and number two things that and this may be more of just a general tip, but the number one and number two things for a successful short-term rental is cleanliness and managing expectations. So, of course, I don't think we need to put any, I don't think we need to talk in depth about cleanliness. I think we all know that cleanliness is next to godliness, especially in the world of short-term rentals.
That's perfect.
But making sure that your cleaners, whether they are employees or they are independent contractors, understand that what their contract looks like. Now, most cleaners of short-term rentals are independent contractors. I highly recommend having a contract written out that explains exactly what that exchange of money is. So I have one that basically defers back to a standard operating procedure. So it does outline what is expected, but making that very clear that yes, floors, I don't care if they look like they could be licked off of, they get vacuumed and mopped every single turnover, whether the person was there for 12 hours or all week. That is a non-negotiable. And making sure that those things are very clear from the very beginning, and making sure that you're paying that fair market value for that. So managing that expectation, but then also managing the expectation. So I had a couple of examples of managing expectations. So one of them is, say, for example, you have a lot of stairs in your property. It is not just about taking a picture and making sure that people see them, because sometimes people make their decision on the conversion of looking to booking in 5 images. They'll go click, click, click. This is good enough. They don't read the description. They don't read anything. And then they book. And then there is so much importance in making sure that is clearly described, not only in the pictures, but then in the listing description, in the house rules, wherever you can find a place for it, that they know that there are a lot of stairs. We have some lakefront properties that are, if you know Lake of Egypt, you know not all shoreline is created equal.
Five sets of stairs going up.
Right. So making sure that people understand that so that you're attracting the right booker from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Another example is if you have, let's say that you're in a good location, but you have a really unkept neighbor that it is completely out of your control.
Yeah.
Run it through ChatGPT. How do I make this sound professional?
Yeah, right.
And explain that we have an unkept neighbor next door that should not affect your stay. And we've had that in the past. We had this very sweet elderly man, but he was kind of a hoarder, and we did put a privacy fence. But if you were driving through, and past his house, you would kind of get the shock value of like, oh my
Where
goodness.
am I? Yeah.
So
Is this safe?
putting that in there of like, we have a very sweet neighbor that has a very unkept yard. If that's going to bother you, then this isn't the place for you to stay, right?
Yeah.
So managing expectations in every way that you possibly can.
Yeah.
Another thing that I feel like is important in hospitality, especially if you ever read Radical Hospitality, I highly recommend it. There's so much that you can do to maximize the guest experience in really small, inexpensive ways. Another one is just managing user error with signage. Now, I have spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on a very beautiful and easy to read online welcome guide that people get as soon as they book. But that doesn't mean that because mom booked the property, because usually it's the female household person that makes the decision on where to stay, that doesn't mean that grandpa is going to go through that welcome guide and read every user interface on how to do things. So for example, if you have a Nest thermostat, it doesn't just need to be in the welcome guide. Throw on a laminated little Post-it note sign that in very simple words explains how to use it, and then a QR code that links directly to the YouTube that is from Nest that is their exact user guide on how to do it. It's like a 30-second to a minute long showing exactly how to use it on the side. Yeah. Those are very simple steps that you can do to help the guest not have confusion, aggravation, and spending time and energy just trying to figure out how to operate the house. Yeah. If you have a multi-switch panel, label those suckers.
Every single label. Yeah.
If it's a single switch, label it.
I know.
Unless it is just obvious that it's the one switch for the one light, then it should be labeled. If it's a multi-switch, it needs to say fan, kitchen recessed, kitchen pendant, and make sure that those are labeled. You want to take all of that guesswork out, because the more guessing and the more energy they have to spend on discovering just how to use a house, the less impressive the guest experience is. So you're wanting to think about how grandpa's experiencing the house, not just mom, the booker, that is tech savvy.
Mm-hmm. That's really good.
I think that's so funny that you said the QR codes with the videos, because we have this fireplace and I have it on a timer switch on the wall. So you can select 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 120, or just select off. But you know what? People get confused by even that. And so you have to have just having the QR code of me even going and showing them, this is what you push if you want to have the fireplace going for 30 minutes. And then if you want it off in short amount of time, you have to push the off switch, not go manually turn off the switch inside the fire, right? Yeah. So it's so funny.
Speaking of your fireplace, this is like, we were giggling at your river house because, we got done cleaning and Jill looks over and she's like, do the logs in the fire look really different to you? And they were like all stacked super weird. Like someone got in there and just...
Oh,
you arranged the fire logs.
Well, they probably were checking to see if the pilot light was working, if it was a propane fireplace.
But it was put back so odd. Like no one would have done this. We were like, okay, guess we got to fix that. It's not just about making the bed. So
but making sure everything is user friendly is so important. I know even coffee pots and things that seem very obvious to you are not obvious to everybody. Not everybody has the Keurig coffee pot, so you have to show them how to use it, or whatever you have in your unit. Yeah.
I'd love to talk about your company more, and I'm sure you can speak to this. Have you seen, and I'm sure lots of people come to you, whether they're, just starting a short-term rental and they just pass it off to you and they're like, I don't want to do it, you do it. Or people that have maybe been managing it for a year or 2 years and then they're like, I don't feel like I'm the best at this, give it to you. What, type of success have you seen with people, if theirs wasn't that successful, do you have like a number that when people come to you, you're like, you get this many more bookings?
Or how do you manage your people already? Like you have suggestions kind of right after you
I just mean let's say Jill is managing hers by herself right now and she's not the best, which Jill's a great host, but say she's only getting half the year booked. Do you see that when people come to your company and you start taking over that management, that bookings go up, success rate goes up?
Yeah. So there are some benefits to doing that. Now, I am very careful to try to
guarantee a promise.
Guarantee a promise that I can't deliver, because as we know from COVID, no one has a crystal ball and we don't know what the future holds. So I'm very reluctant to say that I can guarantee anything. But I can say that everybody that has onboarded with me, whether they had been a manager, self-manager or self-managed, or was brand new to the short-term rental or just looking for the property investment, they haven't left. And there was proof in the pudding of the revenue management, the occupancy, and all of those things increasing. A couple of things that I do for that, and I feel like we can kind of talk about a little bit of tech stack, is that having a revenue management tool or utilizing a revenue management tool is one of the things that, even if you have one property, is so important to do. When I started the cabins in 2018, we basically had a weekend price and a weekday price. It didn't change. And we did very well. As soon as I added a revenue management tool and I got my own personal thoughts about what it should be priced out of the way, and I moved my opinions to the side and let the revenue management tool take over, we increased in the 6-month comparison. We increased by 65% revenue.
Wow.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that it was because everything was inflated. It was that we were capturing more audience during the week because we were lowering the price to a competitive price. And those peak seasons and the peak market times that, let's say, I didn't realize was a bass tournament at Lake of Egypt where,
all these fishermen
all these people are coming.
And that dock looks really attractive.
Right.
Rather than launching your boat in the morning with 50 other fishermen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway,
so
go ahead.
those things are really important in order to take your own opinion of what it should be priced at out of the way, whether you feel like it should be priced higher or lower. But letting those revenue management tools do what they do best. It's not a set it and forget it. You do really have to. And I'd say that's one of my biggest strengths, is that I am in our revenue management tool every single day. I am very granular with each individual property, and each one of them has their own pricing strategies. Now, but that is one thing that I think that everybody should be on, is have a revenue management tool. I personally use Price Labs. You could use anything beyond pricing, AirDNA. There's a lot of them out there. The other thing is that if you're growing or scaling, is to invest in a property management system. Now, you had mentioned Logify. I use OwnerRez. I've used it since I had started the business in 2018, because we started out of the gate with 2. Having a property management system is going to allow you to automate better, especially with across multiple channels. So when I say channels, I mean Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, anywhere, your direct booking website. So if you make a change, it's kind of the spoken wheel system, right? So if you make a change, say you update your pictures, then you update them in that one property management system, and then it shoots out to all of those channels, and you're not duplicating that effort.
Same with pricing, same with everything.
Same with pricing, let's say that one of the things that we do is I guarantee my cleaners the day off of Thanksgiving. That is, so I don't want to not capture those that are staying or wanting to go to another place for Thanksgiving. So, but we just have no check-ins and no check-outs at Thanksgiving. So you can come Wednesday and stay to Friday. You can come Wednesday and stay to Saturday. You can't come in on Thursday and you can't check out on Thursday, because that would require the cleaners to clean or for us to spot check the property. And I don't want anybody working on Thanksgiving. Same with other holidays as well. So Mother's Day, Easter, New Year, or, we have those types of holidays where you can put that in that property management system, make sure that those dates are exactly what you want, and then it shoots that out to all of those online travel agencies. Yeah. So back to your question, though, I don't guarantee it. People do see it, and they are very happy with our relationship and the transparency that I provide. We do a monthly statement at the beginning of every month for the previous month. And in that statement, it's almost like an owner's newsletter, right? Yeah. So we have some higher level things of what's going on in the company. And then we have some very granular things that are very specific to that property. What's some work orders that we have that are outstanding that, if they happen to be coming down in the next couple of weeks, maybe they want to just take care of themselves. They have that option. So we give them outstanding work orders. We have information about, if there's any suggestions. We have one property that has the most perfect driveway for a mobile pickleball area, pickleball court. And so we've been working with the homeowner on what that looks like. And, we want to make sure that it's temporary and things like that. So we're looking at the painter's tape and then the other things that you can add and remove if you actually don't want to want to have a pickleball,
court in your driveway.
Court in your driveway. So some of those things that we have, I've used ChatGPT to show some before and after photos of an unutilized space. Mm-hmm. So let's say garages that are not used by the guests, and it's not really used by the owners, and it's just this empty space. That's a huge opportunity there. Mm-hmm. So, talking and explaining like what ideas that we can do, that we can add a recreation room in a garage and, those sort of things. So every month they get a very detailed and very personalized information, not only on that, but then again on that revenue management. So for me, I like to make sure that all of our properties are at 1.1 MPI, which is market penetration index. So if you are at a 1 of market penetration index, that means that you are doing exactly in the 50% of the bell curve of the rest of the comps in your area. So if you're a 2-bedroom in Southern Illinois, let's say south of Marion, and you're at a 1.0, that means that you are basically right in line with how everybody else is doing. That's a 2-bedroom in that area. I want to make sure that all of our properties are doing at least 1.1 to 2.0. If they're doing more than 2.0, which we do have some that are at 2.0, which means that they're doing 100% better than their market comps, then something is wrong with our pricing and we are way too low. So I don't even like to see 100% better than the market comps. Now, some of them are out of my control, like the glamping dome is like at 3.0. So but that's because it is so high demand and so high demand.
Yeah. Well, good. I need to build a glamping dome then, don't we? No,
you do.
Another one. No. It sounds like you some competition. No, I'm teasing. Oh, I love that you keep an eye on that and that you get a report, because that's so important to the owners. And are you doing, so we talked about like filing the tax forms with the county and all that stuff. Are you doing that? Or are you giving the owner the information they need to do that themselves as a property manager?
So because, again, with that gray area of the eyes of the court, I want to make sure that anything that I touch is legal, it is safe, and it is a good experience for guests. This falls into that legal part. Mm-hmm. And so because it is a legal requirement, I want to have that locus of control. Yep. So we take care of that for the property owners. Now, that doesn't mean that we pay all of their taxes and take care of paying their property taxes and everything else. It is specifically for the occupancy taxes. But we do take care of that.
Great.
If someone was looking for a property manager, I don't even know if you're the only one around our area, but if they were looking for someone, what are some things you would tell an owner of a short-term rental to avoid in a property manager? What's a red flag? Because you've got me sold, Allison. I'm like, you can have my stuff any day. You're great.
No, we do have a few other property management companies, and I think that they do excellent job. I've never heard complaints about anybody or any other companies that are in the area. Red flags just in general with if there was a, say a co-host or a host or a property manager that's wanting to get started, or, any of those things, or even if they're a well-oiled machine. A couple of things that I would say is a red flag would be that if the expectations are not set from the beginning of what is covered and what's not covered. Mm-hmm. So making sure that those things are outlined from the very beginning, but then also transparency. So there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, and making sure that those things are transparent. So for example, we take care of a lot of maintenance. So my husband leads a maintenance team for all of our properties. He doesn't know what he's doing from one day to the next. So we have a lot of bills that go out. Now, it is in our discovery call slide deck contract that maintenance is kind of its own separate entity, and we do have an upcharge of 10%. So anything that for the administrative burden and taking care of purchases and things like that really are the owner responsibility, we have a 10% upcharge on that. However, every, let's say, Menards purchase or every single purchase that was made for that property for that month is uploaded into their statement. So if it is a $10 item and we charge $10 or $11 for that for that item, they still get that receipt that was the $10 item. So it is very transparent what is spent on their property, and so that they don't have any questions on the integrity that we're trying to uphold as doing good and taking care of their property. Mm-hmm. Even if it's an expense to them, we want to make sure that they understand what that expense was and why it was done and what that is. Of course, if they're bigger expenses, we talk to the owner first to decide what the best course of action is. But those smaller things like toilet flanges and, all of the little things that can go wrong on the day-to-day basis, that we take care of without involving the owner, we still, even if it's a $10 item, we still make that very transparent. And if those things aren't transparent and you're just getting bills and you don't understand why, then that's definitely a red flag.
Yeah, I think the integrity piece, because if you're not having integrity with the small things, what are the big things you're missing as or that you're not seeing that are happening?
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. Another thing that I would say is the only other thing that I would consider as a red flag is just not listening to owner concerns. So, whether that is if they are local or when they come down that, maybe they have an issue with the way beds are made, or they want to have something really specifically done. And, of course, there's a standard of operation that we try to uphold in all properties. But if there's something that an owner wants that's very specific to their property, then we do our best to try to accommodate that. So, for example, if they are an owner that wants to have information out about them or their businesses, or, some business cards of their own, things like that, then we need to make sure that we can accommodate them to the best of our ability. So really listening to the owners and not just pushing them off and saying, we do everything our way, and that's the only way that we do it, and not listening to them and not trying to meet them in the middle.
Yeah. I want to hear about your company and what's next. What's next for Southern Illinois Vacation Rentals?
Whew. That's exciting. Yeah, so I'm really excited about 2026. I know going to hit 50 by the end of the year. We have several in the queue right now. I am on my way to Harrisburg to check out a couple of properties that are getting ready to launch. Hopefully by the time this podcast rolls around, we'll be promoting them as beautiful, beautiful apartments, really right next to a wedding venue. So they're gonna do really well, and I'm very excited about them. So I have no doubt that we're going to hit 50 this year. And again, with that 50, there's the shift, right?
Yeah.
So going from 45 to 50 this year. And what we're going to add and do differently is we're probably going to have quite a bit of reorganization within the company itself. So maybe not so much things that people will see because they're on the back end, but are going to make a really big difference to the way things operate on the back end, which we're really excited about. Some things on the front end that I'm really excited about are implementing as much as we can and as much as possible, incorporating small businesses into the management aspect and the guest experience. So we talked about coffee and the roastery. We're going to be working with a roastery that is local, and as much as we can incorporate those sort of things that we are going to do. So whether that is local painters and artists or artisans, but is incorporating that as much as possible for the guest experience. And we are going to up our ante on our enhancement packages. So we do, again, this falls back into radical hospitality. We offer everything from birthday packages to romance packages, delivery of groceries. So all they have to do, especially for places like Elizabethtown, right? So you're in the middle of nowhere. And
I know, I'm like, let me stock your fridge for you because you're not going to want to go back to
you don't get it. Managing that
groceries.
expectation is so important that you're in a food desert. Yeah. And once you get there, it's beautiful, but you need to come prepared or let us help you be prepared.
Yeah. Food desert on a
you're going to go to
a listing is kind of hilarious. You're in a food desert.
Yeah. So grocery delivery is one of our enhancement packages. We have all different kinds, and we're hoping to add to that enhancement package list next year. So we're really excited about that.
It's so fun.
Allison, what would you say to someone like me? There's probably a lot of people like me who live in Southern Illinois, have just a normal 9-to-5, and are interested in getting into the short-term rental business. What would you say to me? Go for it. Do it. Is it worth it around here?
It is. There is an increased supply. I don't think we are overly saturated. Mm-hmm. So I think there is still room. I would say that the best way to get into the short-term rental, there's two ways. You can spend the higher dollar and go into it with a turnkey rental that somebody is either selling or moving out of, and that you are able to do that, or to get into the midterm market, because the midterm market is a little safer and there's a little bit more security in the income that is coming in. So that would be the two different ways that would be a really good option, unless you are very talented and can do a lot of a lot of work and are very creative, and you know how to create a very unique space. And just because a property is small, again, those are the most consistently booked when they're done right, as far as decor and amenities. So I think there's plenty of room for those that want to get into the short-term rental market. I would just say that to do your research and make sure that you are going in with the idea that unique experiences is what is going to drive revenue.
Perfect. I love that. Are you accepting any new homes?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Okay.
We start with a discovery call. If it seems that we are on the same page with the discovery call, I follow up with the slide deck. I make sure that all of their questions are answered after reviewing that slide deck. And then we have essentially a checklist where we have owner checklist, my checklist, and then a together checklist in the middle of what that looks like. So we can add properties as quickly as 2 weeks. Sometimes it'll take several months. It depends on where they're at in their stage of readiness.
All right. And if people want to reach out to you and get started, how do they find you, Allison?
Yeah, Southern Illinois Vacation Rentals. So you can just type that into Google or wherever you want to. The short way to get to that website is SIVR.rentals. So that is our main handle on all of our social media pages. And that is the official website. Email, just because southernillinoisvacationrentals.com is long to spell out. So it'll get you there, but SIVR.rentals is the easiest way. And then we do have our management section there that you can get a hold of me and contact me, and we can open that discussion up and go from there.
Well, this has been so fun.
Yeah.
And I just thank you for taking the time, because it sounds like you're super busy and I know you've got a lot going on here. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was exciting. I can talk all day. This is my, this is my life. And so I can talk all day about short-term rentals.
I love it. Well, maybe we'll have you back then. We can get in
granular with maybe something very specific. So
direct booking.
Yeah,
that seemed to be a hot one for you.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's a good one. Well, thank you again for being on. And to our listeners, we'll see you next week.
So Jill, where do we go from here?
Be sure to check out our show notes for this episode, and also be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.